Alright, so about a week ago we got Minecraft 1.21.4, and with that update came a lot of reasons why your data pack's probably broken. So, in this video I will be going over how you can get yourself back up to speed. Now, as always, I will be assuming that if you're watching this video, your data pack was working in the previous version, that being 1.21.2 or 3, they're basically the same version, and I'll only be going over what you need to do to get something that was working before working now. Alright, so our first change is pretty small, and it has to do with the trail particle. Now, the trail particle wasn't used in the game until this version, but because of the experimental snapshot data packs, it actually existed in commands in the previous one. So if you had been using it, there's a little bit of a change you need to make to it. If you had a command that looks like this before, in the new version, it will have this little additional extra field called duration. And this field is required, so if you don't include it in this new version, things will be broken. Now, duration acts basically like how it sounds, in that it controls how long it takes for the particle to get from its initial position to its destination. And it's given in ticks, so 20 means 1 second. Now it's going to be hard to make this command act exactly the same way it did before. In the previous version, the duration was totally random, so whenever you spawned a trail particle, it would just randomly pick how long it was going to take to move. In the new one, you have to pick that duration manually, and you can't randomize it. Now I did a little bit of testing with it, and it seemed like before, the average was about on the order of 1 second, so I just would recommend putting 1 second right here unless you have a specific duration in mind, but that's just what you're going to have to do now. Up next, we've got a change to the equipable component. So if you're giving yourself an item that is equipable and you have it rendering a custom armor model, this field is no longer called model. It's now called asset ID in the new version. And as far as data pack changes go, that's the only change. But if you are using a custom model, there's a little bit of a change you have to make to your resource pack as well. And I'm going to go over that really quickly. So in these example data packs, I've included both an assets and a data folder. Now obviously assets doesn't go in a data pack, but I'm just putting it here for ease of understanding. So in the previous version, if you were rendering a custom model with a custom namespace and then a model name, that path would point to something that's under assets, namespace, models, and then equipment. In the new version, that path is different. It's now assets, namespace, and then just equipment. So equipment is actually next to models rather than being inside. And as far as I'm aware, the actual files that go in the equipment folder look exactly the same. They haven't changed at all. It's just that they have changed locations. Up next, we've got a change to TNT minecarts, and all that was changed is this one little NBT field on them. In the previous version, it was called TNT Fuse like this. In the new version, it is just Fuse with a lowercase f. Next change is pretty similar. It involves furnaces, blast furnaces, and smokers. And much like the minecart, the only thing that was changed were just the names of some NBT fields. So we've got cook time total, and then burn time. In the new version, those fields act exactly the same. They're just renamed to cooking time spent, cooking time total, and then lit time remaining, respectively. It seems to be a trend of making the move to all lowercase and then using underscores instead of capitals. Now I do actually know why this change with the furnaces happened, and it's because they wanted to add a brand new field called lit total time, and they wanted the names of the old ones to be consistent with the style of the new one. Alright, so moving on, next up we've got a change to world gen, and specifically custom biomes. So in this version, the biome music system was overhauled. So if you've defined a custom biome and you had a music field like this, it had a few changes with it. Now, as you can see, in the old version, it was just a simple object with these 4 fields. In the new version, it's a little bit more complicated, so it's now a list of objects rather than just an object. The previous single object is now under this inner field called data, and then beside data, you also have to give it a weight. So it's kind of like a weighted list, similar to a loot table. The biomes will now pull from the weighted list to randomly decide which music is going to play. So if you were using a single music object before, this is what you do now. And again, all 4 of these are identical to the way they were before. The next change is the removal of a bunch of vanilla tags. In block tags, the tall flowers tag was removed, and for items, the tags called flowers, tall flowers, and trim templates have also been removed. If you were using those tags before, you can no longer use them now, and the obvious fix is just to redefine them in your own data pack. And finally, last but certainly not least, we have to cover the giant overhaul that took place with custom model data and item models. Now, this change is huge. It affects both data packs and resource packs, and given that this video is specifically focused on data packs, I'm going to be giving you a little bit of an overview of how you could fix a very basic custom custom model data set up from before in your resource pack. But if you're doing more advanced resource pack stuff, I will be providing links down in the description so you can read up on all of the changes in detail. If all you were doing before is just using custom model data to define custom items, then this video should be enough to get you back up to speed from both a data pack and resource pack perspective. Now, with this change, there are a couple of different ways to update. There's the one that the game kind of wants you to do, and then there's the one that I would highly recommend because it's so much easier. And that's the one I'm going to show you first. So for starters, let's say you just had an item with custom model data on it. So I just said, give myself a brick with custom model data equals 1. Make it as simple as possible. Just as a quick review, and to make sure we're all on the same page, I will show you how the resource pack used to handle that. This brick has a default item model, which can be found under Assets, Minecraft, Models, Item, Brick, right here. And if I gave it custom model data of 1, I would define in my resource pack an override with a predicate for custom model data 1, and then have it point to a new item model. And in my case, I've decided to put that new item model in my own namespace and call it just example item model. I'll show you that model as well, just to be clear. It's under tutorial, again, models, item, and then example item model. And to make this as simple as possible, I just decided, okay, I'm going to turn that brick into a gold ingot. So with that resource pack setup in the previous version, a regular brick would still just look like a brick, and a brick with custom model data 1 would look like a gold ingot. Now, something you could have been doing back then, and in fact my opinion is that you should have been doing this, is using the item model component. It's much easier to just type okay/give as a brick with whatever item model it is, and I'm using a vanilla one here, but you also could have done a custom one. So if I give myself this brick, well, it very clearly looks like a gold ingot. That was, in my opinion, the smart way to do it in the last version, and if you're still using custom model data, when you migrate over to this version, you should start doing this. In the new and updated function, I've given this command right here, which I've labeled as the highly recommended change. You just give yourself a brick with an item model that points to whatever custom item model you have. Now, if you were already using item model, that syntax has not changed, at least as far as the components are concerned. But just like with the custom armor models, there has been a change to the way it's structured in a resource pack. So like I just showed you before, under 1.21.3, you would have assets, and then your namespace, and then models, item, and then your model. If you had the item model component with just namespace and then item name, it would point right here. In the new version, the exact same item model component, the exact same pointer, will now point to assets, namespace, items, name. And yes, they added an S this time. They added an S, and also, notably, it's no longer inside the models folder. It's now in its own folder. And unlike with the custom armor models, this model actually has changed a ton. This is what it now looks like, and if you were using the item model component, this is all you have to do. Now you may be looking at this and wondering, okay, why in the heck am I pointing to another model using this file? And that is because there is now a very big difference between item models and just models. An item model specifies a whole bunch of details about the item, and we'll see a little bit more of that in a second with the custom model data part, and a regular model is just a rendered object that your computer can render for you to see. So this file basically says the details about this item, which I'm calling example item model, are to just render this raw model. And the raw models are basically exactly the same as before. They're now under assets, namespace, models, item, model. Right? The only difference with these files is that they can no longer have that override section. Okay, let's take a step back. That was a lot. Feel free to rewatch that section as many times as you need to. Right now, all I'm going to do is, with that new information, just go over what is literally happening with the item model component in this new version. I give myself a brick. It points to an item model called tutorial example item model. Tutorial example item model is under assets, tutorial, items, example item model. This file points to a raw model called tutorial example generated model, which can be found under assets, tutorial, models, item, example generated model. And then as before, this file just pulls the texture that I want. Can be a vanilla Minecraft texture, or it could be a brand new texture that I've added. And as far as the item model component goes, that's all there is to it. This may look a bit complicated, but as you will see with the custom model data component in just a second, that one's even worse. For this next section, if you really insist on continuing to use custom model data because you really know what you're doing and you have something very specific that you want to do with it, here is how you do that. First of all, custom model data no longer even works the same. It's a completely different component now. Rather than just having a number, it is an object with a bunch of fields inside. Now, any existing items in the world that already had custom model data on them will be upgraded in this way. Before, I just said custom model data equals 1. Well, now that 1 will be added under a list called floats inside the overall object. And it's no longer an integer, it is a float now. Okay, so that's the data pack part. How do I make it work with the resource pack part? Well, again, this brick will have an item model. It'll have a default item model on it called Minecraft brick. And that can be found under assets, Minecraft items brick. Now the key here is to edit that file such that it recognizes the new custom model data. And here is how you do that. You have to use a range dispatch model with custom model data indexed at 0, so you're getting the first entry in that list. Then, if it detects that the custom model data is at 1, it points to the example generated model. And again, these model pointers right here are always pointing to what I was earlier calling raw models. This file is an item model. They reference raw models. And then finally we have this fallback field, so if it doesn't find the custom model data, it just renders it as normal, which is a brick. And then as far as this raw model goes, well, it's exactly the one I already showed you. It's under tutorial, models, item, example generated model. Again, I know this is a lot, okay? I am going to be providing this data pack as an example down in the description that you can download and look at yourself if you want to. Remember that I have put assets and data in the same place just for ease of viewing, but that's not actually how it works in practice. You have to have assets in your resource pack and data in your data pack. And I think that's going to do it. That was the last major change. For obvious reasons, I saved the model part till the very end of the video. And with that giant hurdle out of the way, we are now done. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that was helpful. If you have any more comments, leave them in the comment section or join the Discord. I've been Conyer. I will see you all later.